Adding a wildlife pond to your garden can attract so much beneficial wildlife. It's going to bring in frogs, toads, hedgehogs, birds, insects and more. And in this video, I'm going to show you how I created this small wildlife pond in my UK tropical style garden. Wildlife ponds don't need to be enormous. Yes, the bigger they are, the more habitat you create and the more wildlife you're going to attract. But even a small wildlife pond is going to attract so much wildlife into your garden. Now, the first thing you need to consider when creating a wildlife pond is position. You want your wildlife pond to be somewhere that doesn't get full of leaf litter, so not underneath trees, and ideally not somewhere that sits in full sunlight all day long because you're going to get problems with algae. We've selected a spot that sits in partial shade through most of the year, only really warming up in spring and summer, which is fine. That's going to help attract breeding pairs of frogs and toads. We can use the rainwater runoff from the roof of our greenhouse to naturally refill this pond. The next thing you need to take into consideration when creating a wildlife pond in your garden is depth. Now, to create the widest range of possible habitats for wildlife, you're going to want varying depths through the pond, and you can achieve this even in a small pond like with the one we're creating here. Now, I'm aiming to dig ours to about 2 foot deep, or roughly 60 centimeters, and that's going to be a nice deep area of the pond. From there, we'll come up with a gradual slope, creating an area where amphibians, insects, and any wildlife can climb in and out with ease. And for us gardeners, the benefits of attracting wildlife into our garden using a wildlife pond are really, really good. They're going to help maintain a natural balance. So they're going to stay on top of the slug and snail populations, the aphid populations, and help keep our gardens in a healthy, natural balance. So as I started digging, I remembered just how heavy the clay base of our garden is. It was very sticky and very messy digging in this area, and I actually found some buried builder's rubble, which is so often the case with new build properties. So I tried digging around this, I couldn't find where it ended, it seemed cemented in, so this is going to be where the level changes in our pond. I'm just going to work with what I've got in my space. Clay is actually the most eco-friendly way to create a pond, and clay-lined ponds are created by tamping down the clay, compressing it, removing the air and dampening it, then building up the layers until you create a watertight seal to the pond. And I think this clay may have been thick enough and the right consistency to actually do that, but I am going to use a pond liner just to make sure that this wildlife pond is watertight. I did, however, manage to use the clay's structural qualities to raise up the size of the pond so that I could get it a little bit deeper, which was a pleasant surprise. Now, this end that I'm reinforcing with the clay is going to be the deepest part of our wildlife pond, and the area behind me is going to be the gradual slope up that's going to allow wildlife to easily climb in and out of the pond. Many people think of gardening on clay as a bit of a nightmare, but you've seen the plants I've been able to grow, and actually now you've seen the silver lining that clay can provide when you're trying to build a pond. So you can always find a silver lining. So we've now finished shaping the pond. We've got this gentle slope that then goes over the lip of that builder's rubble I couldn't remove into the deeper area of the pond. So we've got nice varied depths. So now we're at a point where we can add the watertight liner to our pond. I'm just going to stretch it over the pond that we've dug, and I'm going to push it into the deepest part. Once it's in, I'm going to try and remove as many creases and folds as possible, but don't worry if you get some in your own pond when you're creating a wildlife pond or pond of any type. It's inevitable, but the trick is just to try and reduce the number as much as possible. When I've created a pond before, I have used an underlay, and that's just an extra layer beneath the pond liner that protects it from being punctured by rocks and sharp stones. But because I've got so many layers here, I didn't worry about that. We're going to be absolutely fine. Now, the next stage in creating a wildlife pond in your garden is to add water. Now, I am using hosepipe water to start off this pond so that I can fill it up nice and quickly because I didn't have enough rainwater at hand. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm finding it relaxing watching the flowing water even at this stage, and our wildlife pond is nowhere near being done yet. So as our new wildlife pond is filling up, It's revealing where the lumps and creases are in the pond liner, and I'm just going in and tweaking it and shuffling it about, trying to decrease the amount of creases and folds that we have. But like I said, they're inevitable, so don't get stressed too much. And with our new wildlife pond now full of water, it's time to trim back that liner, but not all the way to the water level. We're going to want to be able to fold this back and hide it underneath rocks and plants and make it look as natural as possible. You can see here that after trimming the pond liner, there's still 2 or 3 inches above the water level that we can hide beneath rocks and plants and just soften this edge and make it look really, really natural. Now I know I'm not the only gardener who has a pile of rocks left in a corner somewhere that you know you're going to find a use for. Well, today's the day. We're going to use them to cover the edge of our pond. I really like selecting rocks that have kind of soft round edges because I think they look much more like the rocks you'd expect to see at the bottom of a riverbed. So I'm just placing them around the wildlife pond to try and make it look as natural as possible, and this is a stage that I really, really enjoy. I'm going to try and build a rocky slope out into the soil that I will then plant up around, and some rocks around the edges just to pin down that liner and to hold things in place. And with that done, I'm also adding some potting soil in behind the liner. It's going to help kind of hold it upright, but it's also going to create some planting opportunities. And if you subscribe to this channel, you know me, I love my plants. So that's going to be a very exciting bit. And for me, it's the bit that really brings the whole edge and boundaries of a wildlife pond to life. The plants are going to be where the wildlife hides before it enters the water. It's going to be sanctuary for them. Now, because this area is going to be in full shade for much of the year and then in partial shade in spring and summer, I'm adding a mixture of shade-loving plants. And I'm using some ferns here. These are native Dryopteris ferns. And I'm also going to use some liriope, which is a grass-like perennial with lush evergreen foliage. So it's going to look nice and lush all year round, and it produces purple flowers in summer. I then went on to use a few of the other plants that I've been keeping hold of as edging plants around the pond. I've just dotted them about before I plant them just to make sure I've got the layout right, and then I went on to plant them into the ground. Now, your choice of plants around your wildlife pond is going to be really important, and because I'm growing somewhere shady, I'm using shade tolerant plants. But I'm also using plants that can tolerate damp soil, because if this pond overflows, if we have several days of heavy rain, this soil is going to become damp, and I don't want to lose all of my plants because of that. So by choosing plants that thrive in damp soil, I'm going to overcome that problem, and it's going to help to really create this naturalistic looking wildlife pond area, because all of the plants suit the area in which they're growing. And at this stage, I've only planted the outside of the pond. In an upcoming video, I'll be adding my aquatic and marginal aquatic plants that are going to really help to hide the rest of that pond liner. So let's have a closer look at some of the plants that I've put into our wildlife pond surrounding area to help encourage frogs, toads, birds and more to visit our garden. So I started off with these native ferns. This is a Dryopteris species. I can't remember which one, but they will be semi-evergreen, so they're going to provide foliage cover through winter. Now, as well as the ferns, I have added some Ophiopogon. Now, this is an evergreen grass, and it's going to be a nice cover for any wildlife that's crawling out of this slope, and this grass will spread in time. So will this Saxifraga stolonifera. This is a really nice ground cover plant, so it stays low growing, and it's not going to block my view of the pond as I'm walking down the garden path. It sends up tiny white orchid-like flowers, and it spreads using these stolons as runners, and it will send out more baby plants all along the front and in between the rocks in time. As well as that, I've added some Asarum europaeus. This is a European wild ginger, is its common name. It's not a ginger at all. And it has these really unusual flowers at ground level. It's pollinated by ground beetles. It's a nice, interesting plant, but I like it for these lily pad shaped leaves. I'm not sure this pond's deep enough for me to actually grow aquatic lilies, so to have a leaf that resembles that is quite nice. Then there's this reliable grass-like perennial. This is Acorus gramineus variegatus. This is a grass that I've used as an edging plant in the garden for many years, and it's just a reliable plant that really does thrive in moist soil. I've also used that Liriope muscari that I talked about earlier. Again, a nice evergreen grass-like perennial, so it's going to provide year-round cover for wildlife. And then at the back there, that red leaf plant is Persicaria red dragon. Now that's a nice herbaceous perennial, so that's going to get bigger and better every year and then die back to ground level through winter. I won't chop it back because the dry stems are going to become a habitat for hibernating insects and other wildlife through the winter months, but this red foliage is going to break up that massive green through the rest of the year. And I think I'm going to find a evergreen or semi-evergreen climber to cover that fence panel at the back to provide a bit of height as a green backdrop behind the pond. We'll see. I might play with the planting. No, it's me we're talking about. I will definitely play with the planting over the coming months and tweak it and add some tender tropical plants as the seasons warm up. Hopefully this has inspired you to have a go at adding your own wildlife pond to your garden, even if you're restricted on space. Thank you so much for watching. Hit subscribe if you found it helpful, and I'll see you all in the next one.